What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show today. And a little bit of a dirty wire there. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I don't know that I'm going to be able to take a lot of phone calls because we do have so much to talk about. But Dan is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And there's a lot of stuff happening. It's moving very, very rapidly. The latest is that they just had the Security Council vote regarding the U.S.-backed Syria resolution, and China abstained from voting. Russia vetoed it, and they vetoed it on the grounds that the resolution is written basically on the assumption that Assad did it, and we're going to condemn him for it, and we're going to have an investigation to find the evidence after the fact. And Russia said that they would be much more open to an independent international third-party investigation that wasn't under the influence of the U.S. or U.K. governments to try and get to the bottom of this. But we really don't need an investigation. The story never made any sense at all. Assad was winning his war. They were already getting ready to start peace talks up in Brussels to end the war. 2 weeks ago, the White House was saying that Assad could remain in power if he wins the next election. What is Assad's motive for doing something like this? There isn't one. And if you're talking about a crime, especially a war crime, there must be a motive. And there wasn't one. It never made sense. It didn't make sense in 2013. It didn't make sense in 2014. We don't need an investigation. The story is junk on the face of it. Now, the U.S. did not fare much better in Moscow. Tillerson basically got frozen out. This is how it's being described in the foreign press. They had 2 hours of talks, and Tillerson left with nothing to show for it. Russia is still saying they are not buying the story that Assad gassed his own people, because the Russians can actually think, people. And then, of course, Russia said, we have to remember how the U.S. government lied about Iraq and Libya and all these other places to start the wars. And unfortunately, what we've done now is we've gone through a terrible diplomatic transition. The people are not talking about the facts and the logic and the law and what happened. They're basically down to thumping their chests and saying, it's the way we say it is because we're the ones who are saying it's the way it is. In other words, the U.S. position is, we don't care if it's a lie, you will believe it and act on it, or we will do terrible things to you. And it's creating an image of a United States that really has gone rogue, that's rash, impulsive, dangerous. And remember, the United States remains the only country to ever actually use nuclear weapons of mass destruction on another country. We all need to keep that in mind. Now, Russia slammed Trump for the absurd demand of simply cutting off their support for Syria, and has issued, again, the warning to Tillerson, do not attack Syria again. Now, Trump came on out with a statement saying that we're not going to make war on Syria. There's already reason to doubt that he was telling the truth about that. But all it's going to take is a few more of these false flag attacks, and Trump is going to get up there and say, I have no choice but to go on back in. Meanwhile, Russia is slamming all of the NATO leaders who are going along with this U.S. fraud, describing them as nodding like bobbleheads. Oh, yes, Assad's a bad guy. Oh, yes, we must invade. Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it's a good image. But the reality is, the United States government and Donald Trump violated international law in Syria. They must be getting used to it by now. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is still out there, despite all the pressure pounding down on her, saying we have to remember the lessons of Iraq and Libya. We have been lied into war before, to which I would add we need to remember the lessons of torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor. Trust us, the Lusitania wasn't smuggling weapons to Great Britain. Pearl Harbor really was a surprise. Honest, cross our hearts and hope that somebody else dies. But what she's saying makes common sense. We should know beyond a shadow of a doubt what the real story is before we take any action. Our entire justice system is supposed to be based on a principle demanding proof beyond a reasonable doubt before punishment is inflicted. And instead, our foreign policy is we're going to accuse you of doing something nasty and then punish you for it before the truth can come on out. Now, the White House has released a National Security Council intelligence dossier, which they claim is the proof Assad is guilty. No, it isn't. Accusations do not constitute proof. A government report does not constitute proof of anything real. Look at all the garbage they've been dishing out about human-caused global warming. And taking a good look at this report, it looks like it's a hasty rewrite of the 2013 Obama dossier on Assad, which turned out to be a complete hoax. Because Assad did not gas his own people back in 2013 or 2014 or earlier this month. There's no motive. That's the part that's missing. To figure out if you're being lied to, look for what should be there and is not. And what is not there is a reason for Assad to do something like that at this particular point, knowing that it will cause nothing but harm to Assad and nothing but assistance to his enemies. Needless to say, the liberal leaders are out there saying, we've got to get rid of Tulsi Gabbard, and apparently the move to oust her from the House of Representatives has been met with a very cold response. So now we have Howard Dean and Neera Tanden are out there saying they're going to mount a campaign against Tulsi here in Hawaii the next time that she's running for her seat, which I guess would be next year. So, Tulsi, if you're listening to me, I am going to support you on your next election to the House of Representatives. It's got nothing to do with whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat. It has everything to do with doing what's right, which is what you've been doing. Now, here's where it gets really good. First of all, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our nation. Story came out in antiwar.com. U.S. officials can't explain the reason for the Syria chemical attack. They've been out there saying Assad gassed his own people and Assad gassed his own people. And more people are coming up and saying, why would he do something that stupid? And the government is saying, well, we can't explain it. We don't actually really know. And so now they're trying to change the story that it wasn't really an attack on civilians. It was an attack on an area, an operational target away from the actual Syrian rebels for operational purposes, blah, 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 which doesn't make any sense at all. And they're trying to change the story. Next, they'll claim there was a Branch Davidian church there on the ground. But clearly, the U.S. government is finally starting to understand the people of the United States and the world are no longer the naive, trusting, gullible fools of the 1950s. We question, we doubt, we analyze. The government lied. We know the government lied. The government knows. We know they lied. What do? Come up with another lie. If at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. The motto of the federal government of the United States of America. Well, Donald Trump has taken the position we don't have to explain the reason he's an evil person. Assad is just this evil person. Evil, 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 evil. I would be very careful hurling that label around, Mr. President, because right now there's a lot of people who supported you in your election who are now starting to see you as evil. So be careful of the backlash on that one. All right, we're going to take a couple of quick phone calls here. Nico in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I don't think the people are buying the official story. Initially, some people that I spoke with, they were going for it. But I think that these people who are trying to pass this off as Assad is evil, I think they're underestimating the intelligence and the lack of faith that the American people have in the official story and the media. And this is what I'm coming across.
Yes, what I'm finding too. Yeah. You know, you're absolutely correct. The government and the corporate media have a massive credibility problem of their own creating. I have no sympathy for them. And anybody who's out there saying, well, you know, did you hear Assad gassed his own people? And my response is, this is the 2017 version of Saddam has nuclear weapons. And immediately the light goes on. Immediately the light goes on and they realize they're being had again.
Oh, yeah, and I'm with you. And I'm the one who emailed you a little back and forth. I was having a hard time with people, but now even those people are starting to listen. And I simply asked them, why would he do that to his own people? Why? And their only answer is, well, he's a madman. And I said, what are you talking about? This man's been in power for years. His father was in power. Long story short, if your only answer is he's a madman, I'm going to ask you, where are you getting your information?
Well, something else you can ask them right there, ask them just how successful the American Revolution would have been if George Washington had been shooting the colonists instead of the British soldiers. Just ask them that one. Let them chew on that for a while.
Oh, that's good, Mike. I appreciate everything, man. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Aloha. We're going to switch over to David in Oklahoma. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you so much, Michael. You do a great service for us all. Okay, so what if Trump goes to Congress and everybody thinks he's going to declare war on Syria, and instead we need to declare war on the deep state?
That would be like walking into a Hells Angels bar and screaming, all you pussy bikers suck at the top of your lungs. Congress is part of the deep state.
Is it remotely possible that maybe Trump is doing all this to help flush out and put in the Sicarius guy on CNN and John McCain and Minnie Lindsay? Is it possible maybe that Trump is trying to flush these people out by having this strike in Syria to who the cheerleaders are?
He doesn't need to flush them out. Anybody who's paying attention to the independent media has identified the main players on all of this stuff. No, I'm afraid from where I sit, and I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but it looks like Donald Trump has run up the white flag, and he's joined the war party, and he's all buddy-buddy, cozy-cozy with the neocon warmongers. And no, I'm not seeing him having the courage, the spine, the fortitude, whatever you want to call it, to take on the deep state. He has surrendered.
Okay. So does that mean that all future presidents then, Michael, are compromised in one way? In other words, whoever we think is an angel is going to be, through Google and the deep state, is they going to find something on this guy? And so should we just resign ourselves?
Well, they would want to, but at this point, I am beginning to think that Donald Trump is going to be the last president of the United States of America. We're not going to survive the next 4 years. It's either going to be a massive economic meltdown leading to the collapse of the federal government in like the way the Soviet Union did, or we're actually going to get into these hot wars, which we will lose. So I don't think we need to worry about future elections. We need to worry about restoring a future government to this land. That's what we got to be thinking about right now, okay?
You're absolutely right, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Scott in North Dakota. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just got done calling the White House. You can get through. It took 2 days to get through. It was busy.
Yes, I can imagine.
They have volunteers manning the phone, and I told them exactly what I said. I was a Trump supporter. When he sent those missiles off, that's it. There's no coming back from that. I will never vote for him again. I don't care what he does for the rest of his term. He's done. I don't want any continuation, even if it's a sliver of the Bush foreign policy, not even just a footnote of that policy. If I even sense it from a politician, will they ever get my vote? And here's how I feel about Trump. As an analogy, it would be like you taking your dog for a walk and you see somebody else kicking their dog. Imagine how angry you'd be. What Trump did is as if he came over and kicked your dog. That's how, it's just, there's no coming back from it. And what really gets me is it's barely 3 months into his term before he betrayed us.
Yeah.
He couldn't even hold out 3 months.
Yeah.
And the rationale for us doing anything in Syria We don't have a history of being successful at this. So no matter how justified the situation may lend itself today, which I don't think it is, to interfere, we're not the ones to be interfering. We don't have a successful track history of fixing things like this.
No, we don't. Every intervention has always made the country being intervened in worse because it's being looted and plundered for corporate interests. And the reality is that all the fancy movies and the military channel and the rest of it, I think it's been something like 70 years since the Pentagon actually won a major war. They've had all these little police actions, half of them turned into quagmires that we had to walk out of with our heads held high. We're certainly not winning in Afghanistan. We're not winning in Iraq. We're stuck in quagmires in Yemen and Libya. We've been in Syria for almost 6 years now with no success there. And our military rank and file are disheartened. Our stockpiles are drawn down. Our equipment is all worn out. The stuff that's being built to replace it is all junk. This is a recipe for a disaster if this war agenda is followed any further.
And we don't have the money for it.
No, we don't.
We're over $20 trillion in debt.
Oh, the bankers will be happy to loan us more money created out of thin air at interest to pay for another war, and then after the war is over, they'll loan us another quadrillion created out of thin air at interest for us to rebuild. That's the scam that the private central banks do. The private central bankers love wars. That's their richest harvest of debt is coming from causing wars, and they don't care which side wins or loses. And that's why they're not hesitating to drive the United States forward into this war. If we lose, too bad. They make money off both sides.
And as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, countries that don't have a private central bank so far are North Korea, Syria, and I don't know if Iran has a private central bank or not. But it's just very odd.
They have a state central bank. Yeah, that's what this is. They're trying to bring the whole world into the slavery of the private central bankers, and they're getting dangerously, dangerously close, and they're risking incineration of the surface of planet Earth in this stupid argument over whose brand of ink and paper we use for currency for the next 100 years.
What's really scary to me, Mike, is how many otherwise intelligent people they're against the Syrian attack on Syria, but they're all for the attack on North Korea. North Korea hasn't done anything to anybody.
Yeah, I dare anybody,
other than their own people.
Take a map of the United States, okay? I dare anybody to take a map of the United States and show me just where on that map Syria has attacked us, North Korea has attacked us, Iraq has attacked us, Libya has attacked us, Yemen has attacked us, or any of these other countries we've gone in and mucked about with. You show me where on that map of the United States we have suffered a foreign attack or invasion.
This is nothing but a schoolyard bully taking on the most unpopular, weakest kid in the schoolyard.
That's exactly what it is.
Basically what it is. And it's ridiculous. And Trump's done.
But can I share an insight from my childhood? Because I was that, least popular small kid in the schoolyard. Every once in a while, the least popular kid will decide to heck with it and take a swing, and sometimes they get very lucky because I put the bully on his back with a bloody nose.
I think that's going to happen to Trump.
I think that's going to happen to the United States, and that's what I would like to avoid.
Because the people that are feeding him a bunch of BS about going to war are going to be the first ones to turn on the slightest defeat in any conflict.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Harry Truman used to say, the Oval Office is the hottest kitchen in the world. And he's absolutely right about that. But Trump did want the job, and for better or worse, he's now stuck with it. Apparently, some of his loyalists are out there and saying, well, Trump just didn't understand that the intelligence agencies might lie to him about the Assad gassing his own people. So now they understand the lie has failed. It's cratered. And now they're looking for somebody to dump it on, which is actually a very good sign. But yeah, look at the lies about Assad, look at the lies about Saddam's nuclear weapons, and realize you're being lied to just as much about North Korea. Anyway, we have to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the call, Scott. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're going to take one more phone call. Then we're going to close the lines for a bit because I got lots of stuff to get through. Mo in Florida, what is on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I'll try to be brief. I try to keep my cool because this thing with Trump is so bizarre. Because, if you just look at anything. If there's an accident, a traffic accident, if there's look at the Marine barracks when they blew it up in, what was it, 83?
Mm-hmm.
They had the FBI, Department of Justice. There was no investigation. He didn't do anything. He just sent a bunch of freaking outdated Tomahawk missiles. And what? This is an era of judgment. This is a crisis of judgment. Even if Assad did do it, which everybody knows he didn't, that doesn't follow the brain numbing media, the mainstream media. Everybody knows. So this is an era of judgment. This is bad judgment, Michael. That's the worst thing about it.
Yes, it was bad judgment.
He was an idiot.
It was reckless. It sent a very negative image of the U.S. to the rest of the world, of the U.S. government to the rest of the world. And then they followed it up with that lame story about how Donald Trump was influenced into the cruise missile attack because his daughter Ivanka was upset by the pictures. What kind of an image of the presidency is that putting on out?
I'm embarrassed, Michael. I voted for Trump and Pence, and the only other person I ever campaigned for was Ron Paul. And I am disheartened. This is, if somebody went out there and messed with your car, what would you do? Go shoot him? No, let me get some pictures. If you didn't see him, let's get an investigation. And on a grand scale, he got suckered into this, Michael. Because he's an egotist. The children. None of it makes any sense. You hit it right on the head. Who better? Kay Bono, right?
Yeah. Well, now they're trying to change the story around to make it look like it was a reasonable thing to do. I mean, first of all, they said, that it was an attack on civilians. Now they're backing off and saying, well, some civilians got caught in something else, but still Assad is an evil person, and we were justified sending in the cruise missiles. Then they tried that whopper about how these cluster bomb cases, the empty cases, there's proof he's got chemical weapons. And they're just throwing the lies as thick and fast as they can, and they don't realize each new exposed lie is only undermining what little trust and faith the American people have in this government.
Michael, my last thought. I'm hurrying because I know you want to get rid of the calls for now, but the worst thing of all, this guy's on a hair trigger. We're talking about hitting the button. This just told the Russians. I got goosebumps. This just told the Russians and the Chinese that this guy's a loose cannon. He just hits them. Oh, they're children. The button.
Every leader of every nuclear-armed nation got that message, that Trump could hit that button without any warning whatsoever on the basis of a fairy tale, and that is going to make them much more willing to hit the button if they even think that Trump might react recklessly and dangerously on the basis of ginned-up false information. Anyway, Mo, we're going to let you go here. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while and get back to the news here. Now, the other day, Trump came on out and said, well, we hit that airfield to punish Assad for gassing his own people, and we're not changing our Syria policy. We're there to get ISIS, and we're not making war on Syria, even though Sean Spicer did a Freudian slip in his news conference yesterday saying that the mission of the U.S. in Syria is to destabilize Syria. And then he tried to back up and correct it. He's not having a very good week over there between that one and the Holocaust issue. But Lindsey Graham and John McCain have just issued a joint statement saying it is impossible to separate ISIS from Assad because Iran is backing both of them, and therefore to get ISIS out of Syria, you have to get Assad. Forgetting the fact that ISIS has been fighting against Assad all this time. And Iran isn't backing ISIS, the United States is. So we've really reached the point where they know they can't tell the American people the truth about what's going on. All they can think of doing is let's come up with an even more shocking lie, and hopefully that will overwhelm their sense of reason and analytical thinking, and the shock and horror will carry the day. Not likely to happen. We've seen that tactic before. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, global condemnation continues to pour on Trump's cruise missile attack on Syria. Global rejection, ridicule, and abuse continues to pour all over this third strike attempt to claim Assad was gassing his own people without even coming up for any kind of a reason for him to do it. George Galloway is out there saying that Assad is not mad enough to carry this out. And anybody who says that he did it, they're either a fool or trying to fool you. That's not pulling any punches on that one. Now, the same intelligence and military sources who warned you about the lie that Saddam had nuclear weapons before the Iraq War are now coming out to say that Assad did not launch a chemical weapon attack either earlier this month, 2013, or 2014. It was absurd. It was incredibly stupid to even try this same piece of propaganda after it's already been discredited twice. Over at MIT, the professor who had called into question the 2013 attack, along with UN chemical weapons inspectors, is saying, yeah, this is just a repeat of the same thing. And all we have over at the White House is they've got some papers in a cupboard and say, this is the proof, this is the proof. Reminds me of Joseph McCarthy's, I have a list of names, and the fact that their name is on this paper proves they're a communist. But this professor has read this report that was put out by the National Security Council, and he says there's nothing in it. It's nothing but accusations with nothing to support it. And apparently the White House is down to hoping that U.S. government on the label will make you magically forget all the times that U.S. government has lied to you, and that you will drink this latest batch of USDA choice-approved Kool-Aid. Now, more evidence is starting to surface that this was, in fact, an actual false flag attack and not an accidental detonation of rebel chemical weapons, because over on Twitter, somebody located a tweet by an anti-Assad reporter tweeting about the sarin gas attack in Syria 24 hours before it actually happened. So you think about that. That's been, for some reason, a very common mistake they tend to make. Others are looking back at the videos that were put out by the White Helmets, who we know are aligned with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and opposed to Assad, and they're saying they have all these inconsistencies where they're handling the bodies of supposed sarin gas victims without gloves. There are some videos in which the dead bodies are moving or opening their eyes to see if the camera's gone by. There's one wonderful clip where they go over this guy who's just died horribly, and as they're passing over him in the background, you see him crack up laughing at the silliness of it all. There's some of these so-called first responders just standing there among the dead bodies, supposedly with all this toxic sarin gas around, and they're lighting up cigarettes. Anyway, Robert Steele is out with a video. We put it up on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. He is saying that he has a very highly placed source who he trusts implicitly saying that Brennan, McCain, and McMaster orchestrated this false flag attack in Syria. Putin is now out there saying it was a false flag. He's backed away from this accidental bombing of a rebel chemical weapons depot and saying it is a false flag and there are more coming. Now, do you remember back in February of last year, on the campaign trail, when Donald Trump basically said George W. Bush lied to get the U.S. into the war in Iraq, and he brought up this whole issue about weapons of mass destruction, and we all cheered. Finally, somebody was out there saying what we already knew, that it had been a lie. And here we are all this time later, and Trump has turned into another Bush. Maybe they went over to Westworld and they had that company manufacture a copy of Donald Trump, reprogram him. Because he sure doesn't seem like the Donald Trump we knew and loved last year, not one large bit. Now, apparently, according to a story that's coming out of Activist Post, a very large U.S. military convoy is heading to a new base in northern Syria. Small little reminder, the U.S. does not have permission to be in Syria from Syria's legitimate government. But they seem to have this idea that they can go wherever they want and do whatever they want. And like I said earlier in the show, take a map of the United States of America. I challenge anybody to show anywhere on that map where we have been attacked by Syria, or Iraq, or Afghanistan, or Libya, or Yemen, or Iran, or North Korea. Another article over at Feast and Famine. The problem isn't poison gas, it's poison intel. And we already had confirmation from another source. McMaster's has been manipulating the intelligence going to Donald Trump. They did the same thing to John F. Kennedy. They focused their efforts on McNamara, who Kennedy trusted more than anybody else. They got McNamara cocooned with their own people so that the only information getting through to McNamara was the information they selected to get McNamara to go along with their agenda and convince John F. Kennedy to do the same in Vietnam. That's how presidents can be co-opted without even realizing it. And it's another reason why Donald Trump, instead of being magnanimous in victory and allowing all these holdovers and these neocons to come on back in, he should have scraped out the White House, the executive office building, and brought in people who know how to do things, make things happen, who are not part of the traditional political class, and therefore are not compromised. So, here's a breaking development, and it bodes well. The New York Times is reporting that with the failure of Tillerson to convince Russia to pull their support for Syria, the U.S. is sharply cutting back their air operations over Syria out of concern they could be targeted by Russian missiles. Putin laid down the red line. If the U.S. forces harm any Russian forces, and apparently Russians were killed at that strike on the Syrian airbase, along with civilians, they will be engaged, and those missiles are very, very good at what they do. Now, there's another dimension to all of this, and it has to do with what may have started the escalation a few weeks back when Israel went on in and launched a series of air assaults on Syria, one near the ancient city of Palmyra. And Israel's excuse was that they wanted to prevent Syria transferring weapons, or Hezbollah from transferring weapons to Lebanon. Because obviously if Lebanon had those weapons, then Lebanon could resist the coming Israeli invasion. The problem is, there were no Hezbollah units within more than 100 miles of Palmyra. It was just another lie by Israel to justify going on in and bombing Syria. And they lost an airplane during that little exercise and had one other one damaged. So the attack on that base was being urged by Israel as revenge. How dare you shoot down our planes when we're bombing your country? You're not allowed to do that according to the rules we just made up. Now, somebody sent in a very interesting article, including an image of when it was originally printed. It's on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and it's an article describing, all the way back in 1982, Israel's plan for a Mideast empire aided by ISIS. In other words, this is confirmation that ISIS is working, at least in part, in Israel's interest, which explains why ISIS has never mounted any kind of a major attack against Israel. And the goal was to use ISIS to break up the Middle East, partition off a new Kurdistan, and start carving out more of Eretz Israel, the greater Israel, described in the Bible. Now, as you know, there's a lot of criticism coming on down Jared Kushner. He was one of the strongest voices calling for the Syrian strike, which is now a major mistake. There are calls for his resignation. So, of course, what happens? The Anti-Defamation League comes on out and says, oh, well, Kushner is just a target of online anti-Semitism. Really, it's just that old Jew hate here, because, of course, obviously, if Kushner wasn't Jewish, nobody would care that he urged Donald Trump to commit a war crime in Syria, right? Because that's acceptable behavior, okay? So if the ADL is back to playing that anti-Semite card, it means the online criticism of Kushner has hit a nerve. And again, like lies about weapons of mass destruction, Israel has overplayed the anti-Semite card. 20 years ago, if somebody said, you're an anti-Semite, you go, oh, please take it back. Take my money. Please, I can't live with the shame. And today, somebody says you're an anti-Semite, you go, okay. It's your opinion. I understand they're issuing an Abe Foxman talking doll. Abe Foxman is the head of the ADL. And you pull the string and it talks. Unfortunately, it only says one thing. You're an anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. Now, you know how we're always being told that it's anti-Semitic to say that Israel is exerting influence over our media. We are hearing from Business Insider that employees of Breitbart News have now been ordered by their editors not to write any stories critical of Jared Kushner. And apparently the New York Times reported last weekend, allies of Kushner were complaining to President Trump about the negative coverage he was getting. Well, if you don't want negative coverage, don't do negative things. There seems to be a common feature running through the minds of the elite that it's okay to commit war crimes, to torture, to steal other people's countries and all the rest of it. But by golly, we don't want you talking about it. It makes us look bad. No, it's not the online reporting that makes you look bad. It's your behavior that makes you look bad. It is your actions that make you look bad. And behaving like a child and then ordering nobody to talk about it out of politeness does not cure the problem. Now, over at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, they noted 5 major U.S. newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Compost, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and New York Daily News, ran 18 opinion pieces about Trump's attack on Syria, all of them full of praise. None of them questioning the basis of the story that Assad gassed his own people. Just, oh, it's a wonderful thing. You should believe it's wonderful. And Claire came up with a wonderful term that I'm going to be using from now on for the corporate media. It's infobulimia, which is the swallowing of and revomiting of an official U.S. government lie onto you, the American people. So that's a new term of craft, infobulimia. Write that one down. It'll be on the quiz next period. Let's see. Another story coming out of RINF.com. Donald has just become the president of the U.S. Corporate media and political foes praise Trump's strike on Syria. He's one of theirs now. He's fully on board the war agenda. And again, they may be praising him. It's not going to do any good. Donald Trump's base, the voters who succeeded in overcoming the vote fraud used against him, don't like the established political leaders. They don't trust the corporate media. They're not going to be swayed by this sudden love affair coming out of the corporate media and establishment to Donald Trump. Donald Trump did more than blow up a Syrian airfield. He blew up any chance he has of being a two-term candidate. Anybody is going to be able to beat Donald Trump in 2020. If the Democrats are smart, they'll run Tulsi Gabbard. If the Democrats are stupid, they're going to go on trying to kick her out. Another article, this one from UNS.com, is Trump enlisting in the war party? It certainly looks like it, although it may be more accurate to say he got drafted against his will. Another article out here over at the Duran, 10 well-known deplorables now furious with Trump. And they're talking about all these people, notable people, who stood up there and supported Donald Trump, and they were denounced as deplorables by Hillary Clinton. Oh, anybody supporting Trump is deplorable. And they stood their ground and they supported Trump, and now they're turning on him. They're furious. They are feeling betrayed. They're feeling used and abused. And most of them, like me, don't even care how this transformation came about. Was Donald Trump simply lied to and tricked into this attack? Did he really just decide he was going to be a war president? Did they make a copy of him over at Westworld? Who knows? I don't care. All that matters is what happened. Donald Trump launched an attack on a sovereign nation that has not attacked us, that we are not at war with, on the basis of incomplete, inaccurate, and based on the historical precedents of 2013 and 2014, likely fabricated evidence. and the other nations of the world, it's going to make them nervous. The world has become a much more dangerous place because of what Donald Trump did. For whatever reason he did it, I don't even care anymore. It's irrelevant to what's going on. Now, somebody has started a petition over at the official White House petition site, Cease Military Intervention Involvement in Syria. And, of course, I signed it, and I posted it to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. And amazingly enough, in the last 3 hours, the number of signatures, people who've signed it, has not increased by a single one. Think about that for a minute. Even after I signed it, the number is still frozen. 3 hours later, the number is still frozen. So, now over at Zero Hedge, they've got an article that is echoing something I have been saying. Yes, we are angry with Donald Trump. We're disappointed in Donald Trump. But it's not just Donald Trump. It's a systemic problem. And in this article at Zero Hedge, it's saying, the headline, the system itself is beyond repair. There's no way to save it. It's going to continue crashing down the hillside off the edge of the cliff into either a Soviet Union-style collapse or a nuclear world war that we are going to lose. Obviously, I prefer the first option. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And, I just realized I know how to get Assad kicked out. Have him fly in United Airlines. Okay, more serious stuff here. Turning to Yemen, there's a very alarming story over at the American Conservative, why U.S. troops may fight alongside al-Qaeda in Yemen. Wow, I thought al-Qaeda was like our enemy or something like that, along with ISIS. And now our soldiers are fighting side by side with them. And we find out President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was sending weapons to ISIS and al-Qaeda. I am so confused. What is really going on here? It's a little disheartening. Very weird comment from Israel's defense minister saying he wouldn't be surprised if Iran's President Rouhani is assassinated. They're coming up on elections next month, and apparently Ahmadinejad wants to re-enter public life in Iran. And all of a sudden we have Israel talking about President Rouhani. I would not be surprised if he's assassinated. What are they telegraphing? Remember in Dubai, Israel sent 27 Mossad agents to a 5-star hotel in Dubai to murder Mahmoud al-Mabou, a minor Hamas figure. It had nothing to do with Hamas or Dubai. It was a warning that Israel can go anywhere and kill anybody that they want. So keep that in mind here. All right, let's grab a phone call. Mike in Kentucky, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I talked to a few Fox News people that sit and watch, they get all their mind memes from Fox News, and they had no idea that there was a large portion of that apparently is now Saudi Arabia. Murdoch changed horses back last year. I forget why, but he's got a new head of Fox News. So
yeah, and Fox has kind of lost their independence since then.
Well, I saw a story earlier today blip up on the screen where whoever it was that Tillerson was meeting with, they were having a joint press conference, and they allowed it to go out over the air that Russia is calling for an investigation into this chemical weapons attack. Like they don't believe what they're being told. Gee, shock of the day, right?
Yeah, nobody's believing
and of course,
it.
Now the people that watch enough Fox News do because that's bull because Russia's in bed with Assad and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, you're not.
You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. You're assuming that the people who are watching the corporate media are actually believing what they're seeing and hearing. I watch Fox News. I watch the corporate media to find out what I'm being lied to about. I can hear in neighboring units during the news broadcast where people are screaming, "That's nonsense. That's garbage." And
I pointed out to them, though, that who benefited from it, and that the Israelis are drilling in the Golan Heights, and they're the ones that started bombing out to protect ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They didn't know any of that, and they finally just went, oh, well, I don't know what's going on. And I'm saying, you don't. If you're all only watching Fox News, you don't. You're missing out on a lot of that.
If you're watching all corporate media and nothing else, then you are deaf, dumb, and blind. We got to take a break for station identification. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And we may not need much of an investigation because people are coming forward. Information is coming on out. InfoWars is now reporting or quoting Robert Perry. He's a journalist. He blew a lot of the secrets wide open in Iran-Contra. Remember, Iran-Contra grew out of that cocaine and gun-running operation run by the CIA out of Arkansas under then-Governor Bill Clinton. That Robert Perry. He is saying that he has been talking to U.S. intelligence experts who are saying that a drone was responsible for that chemical attack in Syria. It was launched from a joint Israeli-Saudi base in Jordan. And that's how it was actually carried on out. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab some phone calls. James in Tokyo. Ohio gozaimasu. O genki desu ka? What's on your mind?
Not genki, Michael. There's so much radiation here. In another 10 minutes, I'm running away from Godzilla, for Christ's sakes. You know, Michael, what the heck are you talking about? Assad didn't gas his own people. Would you believe that his popularity ratings are so high that he had to gas his own people to get the popularity rating down a little bit to have the international community accept some kind of normal consensus?
No, I would not believe that. I would not believe that one at all.
Would you believe that he went into that town to do an infrastructure project, and he had a bad case of indigestion from a falafel stand, and he wanted to get revenge from the falafel guy?
No, I wouldn't believe that one.
Well, me neither. Michael, I can never convince you of anything. Hey, you had a guy call you in the beginning of your show that said, picking on bullies. Bullies picking on little people. I don't think that the North Korea is a little people if you understand the military stuff that they have. I've been to Incheon, Busan, I could give you the 6 bases. I can't pronounce the names of, so I'm not even going to try. But it's not even that. Like this is not like an Iraq or a Syria. This is like a country that prepared for this for over like 50 years, and it's not going to work out well.
Well, if you look at the history of the Korean War. And we did put up an article about this, the huge amount of abuse they took from the United States during the Korean War, and still it never officially ended. They just had a ceasefire, and they never had an armistice. Nobody declared victory. And we even had a scan from a page here about, just tons, almost half a million tons of bombs and napalm were dropped all over North Korea. Those people really suffered. I mean, a significant portion of their population was destroyed, and still they wouldn't give up. And so that's something else that we need to keep in mind when we talk about war on North Korea, because these are people who have been through it before. They know what the United States is capable of doing, and they're fighting for the land they are standing on. And that's always going to give the defenders an advantage against an invader. But in the technological areas of war, especially nuclear weapons, there's no question that the U.S. would dominate North Korea, which is why North Korea is not going to launch a nuclear weapon against the United States without a really good reason to do so.
Yeah, they have to use nukes. They have to use nukes because the bunker buster bombs can only go about 30 meters down in the ground, about 100 feet, let's say. And the North Koreans have about 80 meters down. Caves, over 500 kilometers of underground tunnels. They have like artillery, which is self-propelled. It comes in and out of mountains. And the E-bombs can't even do anything because the chain of command is just like, it's not even like they don't do it, electronically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's like a no win-win situation. And the only thing that will happen is, North Korea will be destroyed, but they're going to destroy the 6 American bases. They'll destroy Seoul, and they get like maybe 50 kilometers, like even past Seoul, and destroy whatever, and then that's it. So it's like smoke coming up in the air, and like who won it? Like nobody won.
Well, the U.S. government is talking about a decapitation strike against Kim Jong-un and his leadership in order to simply take over North Korea and impose another ruling junta. But again, North Korea's retaliatory reach may be a little bit larger than you're thinking. As we were talking about yesterday, North Korea has launched at least one, if not two, of these new Sinpo-class ballistic missile submarines. And they're nowhere near as effective, obviously, as the Ohio class. But they carry 2 ballistic missiles in vertical launch tubes in the sail, and they can carry nuclear weapons on those missiles. And the missiles supposedly have a 500-mile range. Those submarines can be pretty much anywhere as long as there's a tending ship in attendance to them. And that allows them to maybe get a lot closer to Japan, maybe down to Guam, maybe, heaven forbid, to right here in Hawaii. And but again, North Korea will not launch first because they understand that the U.S. retaliation will turn North Korea into a giant slab of molten glass. All these other nations know that. And that is why the United States has been the only nation to actually use nuclear weapons against another country, because nobody else had them when the U.S. committed that crime.
Yeah, I agree. They won't launch first. But, North Korea has the highest caliber and successful artillery weapon. It's like a 240-millimeter multi-rocket cannon that can do 500,000 rounds in an hour.
James, I'm going to have to let you go. We're having some problems with the phone line here. But before you go, I just want to make one more comment. We now understand that the reason for the high failure rate in North Korea's missiles is that the CIA or the NSA hacked into North Korea's military computers, of which they don't have very many. It's a very small internet presence, and basically introduced bugs into the software for those missiles. If North Korea has found and removed that, those missiles might prove to be a lot more effective than we have been led to believe. Anyway, James, we're going to let you go. We've got a bunch of callers waiting on the line, then we need to get back to news. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and then we are going to go to Kathleen in Paris. Bonjour, mon ami, comment vas-tu?
Oh, you turned down the speaker there.
Is my accent that funny? Okay, aloha nui nui yourself.
No,
Claire's laughing in the other room. Claire's laughing at my French accent in the other room, so.
Oh, your French accent's not nearly as bad as a lot of people. So the reason I'm calling is about, how they don't change things up. It's always anti-Semite and that. Mm. Well, aren't we all shaking our heads about what? Another chemical attack, 2013, 2014. Couldn't they at least change it up a little, just for our amusement? Why would they just give us the same? Well, I have a theory, and it comes from listening to this guy, Ole Damengard, from Germany. He's an activist who's a bit of an expert on staged hoaxes. Mm-hmm. And he thinks that the perpetrators of these hoaxes, I don't know, the deep state or whoever they are, that they've got something akin to a rock band, traveling rock band, where they just go and set up and do the hoax, to set the staged victims with the actors and filming crew and all like that. So maybe they just don't have that much ability to change it up.
Well, let's clarify here. Certainly with regard to all those ridiculous videos that they were showing us to prove that ISIS was this really horrible, evil people, even though our tax money was being spent to give them weapons to use against Assad. But in the case of this last gas attack, and in 2013 and 2014, there really was an actual chemical weapon attack. But as it turned out, it was not Assad. It was done to basically create this horrific scene and frame Assad. And again, we just quoted this story from InfoWars, where this well-known, well-respected reporter from Iran-Contra is saying that he is hearing from intelligence sources that the chemical weapon was actually delivered by a drone that was launched from a joint Israeli-Saudi base in Jordan. So they actually went out and killed a bunch of people and then went and said, oh, look what Assad did. Look what Assad absolutely did it. And then they launched the cruise missile attack before everybody could stand up and say, wait a minute, we got lied to about this a couple of times before. Can we be a little more cautious this time? And the fact that Trump was not cautious, especially given his recognition and acknowledgement that Bush lied to get us into Iraq, I think it sent the wrong message to the rest of the world.
Yes. Okay. So yes, we do have to look at the differences between a real attack where people are hurt but it was planned. It was a false flag, and a staged hoax.
Yeah, well, they're both being used here. I remember there used to be a TV show that I really loved. It was called Max Headroom. And one of the episodes was about this horrible terrorist group that was going around causing all this damage. And when they finally tracked them down, it was just a bunch of people on a soundstage, making special effects films. And they said, why were you doing this? And they said, well, it's cheaper and easier than actually going out and blowing up a real building. And as long as the media is carrying it,
Yeah, it's just that, I'm waking up to how easy it is for them to pull a hoax or a staged thing,
Actually, it's not that easy. It's not that easy because people who are knowledgeable about how such things get done are spotting the obvious errors and problems. I mean, that's what got me kicked out of Hollywood all the way back in 1994, was looking at that photo of Vince Foster. And just saying.
Yeah, but look, it took them 20 years to figure it out. I mean, in the meantime, people are buying it. I mean, yeah, you're right. A lot of people are waking up. There's you and me and all your.
Oh, the trend in trust is definitely away from the corporate media and the government, and this is a classic case of the trend is my friend. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
All right. We're going to take.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you. We're going to go to Mark in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Yes,
I'm here.
You're on the air. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Just to juxtapose back over to the other side of the world, if people are wondering about, are we ever going to go to war with China? I don't know. It doesn't seem like we're going to go there anytime soon, and here's why. There's a guy named Steven Schwartzman. Steven Schwartzman is the CEO of a group called the Blackstone Group. It's an American multinational private equity alternative asset management and financial services firm based in New York City, as the largest alternative investment firm in the world. Blackstone specializes in private equity, credit, and hedge fund investment strategies. You go deeper into this, and just in 2013, April 21st, 2013, Schwartzman announced a $100 million personal gift to establish and endow a scholarship program in China.
Mm-hmm.
Schwartzman Scholars, it's called, modeled after the Rhodes Scholarship Program. Schwartzman simultaneously announced a fundraising campaign with a goal of $200 million.
Okay, hang on. Okay, here's something that you need to keep in mind. The people who are considering a war in China are not going to call up everybody in the country and say, stop doing business with China, we're about to go to war against them, because that would tip their hand. And the fact is, when these wars happen, like the false flags or hoaxes to start them, a lot of people on both sides get hurt. A good example would be that when they loaded up the Lusitania with those weapons for Britain and sent it into those waters off the coast of Ireland where they knew the U-boats were to get their war going, obviously the passengers on board the Lusitania suffered for it. They weren't told ahead of time you're part of a false flag. All of the businesses that were shipping non-military cargo on that ship, they lost, or their insurance carriers did. The people who operate on the scale of starting wars between nations really don't care about scholarships or anything else going on. They want everything to look like it's going normal until they pull the trigger on starting the war. So, Mark, thank you very much.
Here's the point. Schwartzman is a Republican. He's a long-term friend of President Donald Trump and provides outside counsel and is currently chairs President Donald Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there. So why would he? You see, he's informed. You know, he's not going to make an investment in China and just turn around and go against it. I don't think.
Well,
so he's long-term. So there you go.
Well, Donald Trump probably.
That's what I wanted to share.
Donald Trump probably isn't the one who's saying let's go to war with China. It's going to be manufactured for him. Again, we have that earlier story that this latest organized false flag in Syria didn't come out of the White House. It came out of Brennan, McMaster's, and McCain, and now we're finding out that the false flag was launched from in Jordan. And they snookered Donald Trump along with the rest of us. And everybody who was caught in the middle, nobody got the advance word, hey, you know, don't show up, there's a false flag. The only people who did were all those Israelis who were called the day before 9/11 and told to stay home from work. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you go, and we're going to take one more phone call from Vincent right here in Hawaii. Then we're going to close the phone lines again because I got a lot of news to get through. Vincent, aloha, brah, what's up?
Hey, how's it? So, one of the things that I'm really kind of irritated about that people are coming out and saying that nobody died in the missile attack. People in the alternative media, and then the other thing was there was another thing I know that they're saying.
Well,
and then also saying about every missile hit. We have such good technology. So I'm irritated about both of those because I'm hearing from both sides. Some are saying, how do we know for sure if someone died or not?
Well, again, given that it's the Syrians' air base, they're in a position to know. The United States does not have anybody at the air base, so it's impossible for them to say nobody got killed. And we're hearing that civilians got killed and a couple of Russian personnel got killed. Just looking at the after-action drone footage shot by a Russian drone, it's obvious the base did not suffer that much damage. If all 59 of those cruise missiles had hit their intended targets, the place would have been a shambles, and the runway would have been cratered because the Tomahawk TLAM, the Tomahawk land attack missile, does have a warhead specifically designed to burrow down underneath the runway and explode, creating a void, which is much more difficult to repair than a simple crater. And again, we have reports from 3 other villages nearby that some of those cruise missiles hit there and killed more civilians, including children. At this point, I don't believe anything the U.S. At this point,
Sorry, go ahead.
At this point, I don't believe anything the U.S. government and the corporate media is saying, and neither should you. After being lied to as much as we've been lied to, the prudent thing to do is say they're probably lying until they can prove to my satisfaction they are telling the truth. And that is really the safest way to go.
You got two other quick things. Then you got some of the alternative media believing that the missiles were spot on and that nobody died, and that's really irritating because that's a deal breaker for me totally. I mean, I don't like war at all in any excuse, but as far as that goes, you don't do your agenda just to either look strong or to whatever you want to do it for. One life is not an excuse.
No, it isn't.
One life.
Vincent, there's something that everybody needs to realize. Some of the so-called independent media is not really independent, especially the more well-funded independent media. That money came in with strings attached. and they're trying to co-opt the independent media the way they co-opted the corporate media, and they have unfortunately gotten some people to agree to lie to them for free. Look at that story we just did about Breitbart telling their own reporters nothing critical about Kushner. So there's the rot. Anyway, Vincent, going to let you go. Going to close the phone lines, take a commercial break, back with more news. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, things are heating up in the Western Pacific, my neighborhood. And apparently Japan has sailed much of their fleet, some of it supposedly to join Donald Trump's armada for exercises. But apparently Japan is now starting to grab hundreds of disputed islets. And this is pure politics. We're talking about little lumps of rock that really aren't useful for anything, but they're part of that disputed territories. And that's going to ratchet up tensions with China. And contrary to that caller who called on in, ultimately the United States wants war with Russia and China, more specifically to destroy the ruble and the yuan as threats to the Federal Reserve note. Now, Matisse is out there saying that the Navy strike group is not headed to North Korea for any reason. Shouldn't worry about that. Of course, they didn't really have a reason to attack Syria, but they did anyway. And North Korea knows it. That is the message that has gone out from this harebrained cruise missile attack on Syria. That the U.S. administration, the guy who's got the nuclear button, acts on impulse. He's reckless. And that's going to make everybody else who's got a nuclear bomb much more ready to hit the button themselves, if they even think Trump is getting ready to drop the hammer on them. Russia is worried the U.S. will attack North Korea, obviously. Putin is still trying to keep this World War III from happening. And so am I. But unfortunately, as I've said many times before, everybody must agree to have peace. It takes only one maniac to keep the war going. All it takes is a drone full of a chemical weapon shot in from a neighboring country. Oh, the war is back on. It's going to be wonderful. North Korea is still continuing to warn of a nuclear strike if it's provoked. Trump's armada, and that's what he's calling it, is steaming on. And I love this tweet from Donald Trump saying North Korea is looking for trouble and the United States will solve the problem with or without Beijing's help. North Korea looking for trouble? Excuse me, but who is steaming their armada into whose territorial water? Now, if there were North Korean warships along the coast of California, I'd say, yeah, North Korea is looking for trouble. North Korea wants to defend itself from a U.S. attack. That's the reason for having nuclear weapons as a deterrent, to make the cost of an invasion outweigh its profit. Another story coming out of Stephen Lenman's website, Trump administration preparing options to confront North Korea. And in this one, they're saying the U.S. is actually considering the use of nuclear weapons. And by the way, that's nothing new. During the Korean War, the first one, U.S. military commanders actually wanted to use nuclear weapons on North Korea. Why not? We got them. They worked really great in Japan. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed on that one. Now, Rebel TV's Washington Bureau Chief Jack I'm going to botch this, Posobiec, is warning his followers on Twitter that a strike on North Korea is imminent. Foreign journalists in North Korea have been told to prepare for a big event on Thursday. No indications what it is, and North Korea has sometimes given these warnings to foreign journalists in advance of things like festivals and rock concerts. But still, we're coming up on April 15th, which is North Korea's biggest national holiday and America's real April Fool's Day. So it could all come together on the 15th, which would not be very good. That's this coming Saturday here. Now, there's a story coming out of the Political Insider China considers bombing North Korean nuclear sites. And China is saying that they would consider bombing North Korea if it crosses their so-called bottom line. More about this when we come back from these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we get back to Korea, a story that's just now coming up. One of our members posted it at whatreallyhappened.com. Apparently, last July, during an interview, Senator Harry Reid told CNN's Manu Raju the CIA should just give Donald Trump fake intelligence briefings. He's stupid. He won't know the difference. And it's on tape, and we have that tape on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com right now. So if anybody from Donald Trump's team is, in fact, monitoring my website and this show, this should be at the very top of the précis that you write up after this all ends in an hour and a half here. All right, so we're back to this story. China has announced they would consider bombing North Korea's nuclear sites. And, of course, obviously, that would invite a retaliation across the border. But I think what's going on here is China is sending a message, we're not going to get involved. And they're talking about they will bomb North Korea if North Korea crosses their so-called bottom line, their border. Now, what's really going on here is China is afraid of mission creep in a U.S. invasion of North Korea. There are plenty of historical precedents. World War I began as a war between Austria-Hungary and Serbia and somehow mutated into going into Germany. More recently, the war in Vietnam, which had U.S. forces illegally entering into Laos and Cambodia, along with bombing missions that we didn't find out about until after it was all over. So China is fortifying their border with North Korea and is issuing this warning to make sure that what happens in North Korea stays in North Korea. That is what I think is going on here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that China is on our side, especially as the tensions over those South China Sea islands continue. Now, we're getting more indications of an impending attack on North Korea. Apparently, last February, airmen and aircraft from the New Jersey Air National Guard, the 119th Fighter Squadron, deployed to Osan Air Base in South Korea. So there are already U.S. assets on the ground ready to go. And another story, this one came out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. The Navy SEAL team responsible for killing somebody who looks sort of kind of maybe like Osama bin Laden if you squinted, is now training alongside troops in South Korea to incapacitate Kim Jong-un. Everything is ratcheting up here. Everybody knows a world war is coming. Everybody's trying to get into a good position for it. Russia is supplying 10 advanced Sukhoi 35 fighter jets to China this year. It's part of a contract for delivery of 24 of those advanced fighter jets. And frankly, they make the F-35 look like a balsa wood glider. There's been a bit of a whoopsie over at the U.S. Army's Lake City Army ammunition plant just east of Kansas City. They've had an explosion there, 1 dead, 4 injured. Apparently, the Pentagon is renewing their pressure on Lockheed to try and bring the price of the F-35 back down into something a little less embarrassing. Now then, let's get on back to domestic politics. Things are actually starting to happen here. It has now been confirmed that the FBI was spying on one of Trump's aides during the election campaign. They were spying and monitoring on a Carter Page surveillance, and they had gotten a FISA warrant claiming that Carter Page was part of the Russian interference in the election. And that apparently was their rubber stamp to get spying on the Trump campaign. Oh, we think there's Russian interference, we need a FISA warrant. So, here's my question. After all this spying on Trump and his campaign, and much of that information was subsequently leaked to the corporate media, did they find anything? I think it's safe to assume if they'd actually found hard evidence of Russian interference in the election, it would have been front page news in all the corporate media. Nothing. There is no more proof that Russia interfered with our election than the claim that Assad gassed his own people. All of the election fraud that was uncovered benefited Hillary Clinton. Now, speaking of Hillary Clinton, back in 2006, in one of her meetings, she was talking about rigging the Palestinian elections. They wanted to make sure who was going to win, and it was on audio. The audio tape has surfaced again. So we have, back in 2006, Hillary Clinton just casually talking about rigging national elections, because that's how these things are done. As long as the voters believe there's been an honest election, that's all that really matters. That's all they need. Now, the little bit of good news. Former Hillary Clinton employee Candace Marie Claiborne has been indicted on treason charges. This, according to an article out of Investment Watch blog. And she was indicted when a federal grand jury indicted her, charged her for conspiring to defraud the U.S. government, concealing contact with foreign spies, obstructing an official proceeding, and making false statements to the FBI. Candace, now's the time to make a deal. And if you do, please stay out of suburban Washington, D.C. parks and out of small aircraft. And don't drop another barbell on your neck. Don't be walking home near your house at 2 in the morning. Now, here's a very alarming story. This is out of Brass Check TV. It's actually been in a lot of different places. As you know, the FBI has had a major problem running back several years where the quality of work by the FBI's crime lab has come into question. Frederick Whitehurst, who at the time was the head of the FBI lab, blew the whistle, saying that the FBI lab routinely rigged their tests to favor the prosecution. And that caused a big stir, and Whitehurst was demoted to the head of the paint chip division. And during the whistleblow, he basically indicated there were still components from TWA 800 at the FBI lab, even though the case was supposedly closed and all the evidence was supposed to have been put into storage. And then there was another case that came out more recently that literally brought hundreds of prosecutions into question. And so basically, the FBI crime lab was defrauding lab results and jailing innocent people. And so we've got to have oversight. We need standards, scientific standards for forensics. It's got to be made much more accurate and less rig-proof, and Trump and Sessions just shut it all down. The FBI crime lab is going to be allowed to continue doing what they've been doing, jailing innocent people. And if that does not sound like the behavior of a dictatorship, I don't know what does. All right, let's talk about the media here. Old media is making their move. They're trying to kill independent media, YouTube. They're pulling ad revenues from independent journalists. And, of course, nobody in the corporate media is talking about it. The only one who's talking about it are those who are being hit with it. Apparently, Facebook has their new false news spotter at work on their page, which is why I think everybody should go to DuckDuckGo or Yandex or some other, not DuckDuckGo, not search engine, Scene Life or VK or any of these other social media that are not going to presume to decide for you what is real and what is not. Now, speaking of what is real and what is not, the Daily Mail has basically lost their case with First Lady Melania Trump. They've been forced to print an apology, and they will be paying her a settlement of $2.9 million in damages, according to the Wall Street Journal, over the stories that they published saying that Melania Trump had offered services beyond simply modeling when working as a model in the 1990s. In other words, they basically came out and implied she was a call girl. And again, just as is the case with Assad's gas and Russian interference, they had no proof. And Melania sued, and she won. And the corporate media has been forced to back down and say, yeah, you're right, we made that one up. Well, that's not what they're saying. They're just saying, we were misinformed. You know, it was an honest mistake, really. There was no malice intended. Yeah, there was. If you think how the corporate media was treating Donald Trump back then, man, they were digging up stories about his father, things that happened to his father before Donald was even born. And they couldn't even make that stick. All right, turning to the economic news, Donald Trump is sending a message to Wall Street that much of the Dodd-Frank legislation is going to be repealed and restructured. They're talking about bringing back Glass-Steagall. Of course, the damage has already been done. And, of course, the Wall Street deregulators are out there saying, well, just repeal all regulation. We'll make it work. You can trust us. Look how wonderfully deregulation has worked every time in the past. And it always has for the Wall Street bankers, not for their customers, not for their investors. But repealing Glass-Steagall, I mean, Glass-Steagall was enacted originally to separate commercial depositor banks, the kind of bank that you do business with, savings accounts, checking accounts, to separate them from the more speculative investment firms to protect the customer's deposits. Then when Citibank merged with the Travelers Group to create Citicorp, it was a clear violation of Glass-Steagall. But rather than enforce the law, they passed Dodd-Frank, which is jokingly referred to as the Citicorp Relief Act, to make it legal for them to do what they were doing. And they went right back to doing the same behavior that had contributed to the crash of '29. They were using their depositor funds in highly risky investments. And when it worked on out, they put the profits in their pockets. When it didn't work out, the customers lost. And the FDIC ran out of money. Down in Texas, they're still moving forward on their bill to establish gold and silver as legal tender. What they're doing is they're ending the capital gains tax on the buying and selling of precious metals, which means now they can be traded at value. Before, if you traded gold or silver, there was a tax imposed on it to limit its changing hands. Well, that's gone. And Texas is now declaring war on the Federal Reserve's monopoly on currency. Gold and silver will be legal tender. And by the way, there is no law that says you're only allowed to use the Federal Reserve note, loaned at interest by the private central bank, as a medium of exchange. Currency can be whatever people decide they want to use. They just want you to believe that only the Federal Reserve note can be used. We need to go back to barter here. Good news if you've already invested in gold. All of the turmoil, talk about World War III, investors are getting spooked, and they are starting to flock to precious metals. They're starting to pull out of their savings accounts, especially the negative interest savings accounts. They're starting to pull out of the stock market, which even though the numbers are up, everybody understands it's overvalued. It can't stay up forever. And they're getting into metals, and finally the price of gold is starting to rise. And, of course, the gold riggers are trying to find a way to drive the price back down. But sooner or later, the mechanism is going to work. All it's going to take is enough of the holders of those paper contracts to demand the contracts be settled in the agreed-upon, contracted-for physical metal, and the run will be on, and gold will go right through the roof. Over at Target, their first quarter earnings numbers have come on in. It is an absolute disaster. The CEO of Target has just been blindsided. Literally millions of conservatives stopped giving their business to Target based on the company's policy on transgender bathrooms, and it has really, really cost them big time. Now, the Trump administration has just informed the sanctuary city of Kaonohi they are going to lose all their federal funding. And that is really a good thing. This idea that our borders should be completely open. Look what a mess it has created all over Europe. And it's this push by the globalists to have a one-world government. And folks, thought experiment. Look at our current government and imagine it enlarged to global scale with all of its corruption, the lying, the torture, the wars, the mandated vaccines, the protection of GMO. Take that same exact government, apply it to a planetary scale, and then decide if that sounds like a really good idea for you and, more importantly, for your children. And I think you'll agree with me, no. The bigger governments get, the more corrupt they get, the more tyrannical they get. I think human civilization is best served by a planet with 1,000 little tiny nations all about the same size, taking care of themselves and their people. Yes, there'll be cross-border trade for things exotic, tourism, and there'll be peace, and there'll be prosperity. The push for a global government is a push to enslave all of humankind to private central banking, because that's what private central banking is. It's not an economic system. It is a system of enslavement, to enslave you to the belief in an obligation of indebtedness. All right. Story coming out, again, of Investment Watch blog. Apparently, a war on many fronts, the targeted operations to ensure illegal migrants can vote in 2020. And it's basically talking about how there is still an ongoing campaign to get rid of any laws requiring you to show that you are, in fact, a legal U.S. citizen to vote. Because voter ID is discriminatory. Yeah, it discriminates against those who are not legally supposed to vote. And the illegal immigrants are going to come on in and they're going to vote themselves bread and circuses. They're already doing it. In some parts of the country, the immigrants and refugees are just voting themselves more welfare benefits. And just like ancient Rome, the system is headed toward collapse. Now, Sweden wants more manpower, apparently following this refugee who committed the terror attack with the truck. They're now realizing they've lost track of 10,000 refugees who've already been rejected and are being told they're being sent home, just like the one who drove the truck. And they don't know where they are. And they're trying to find them before somebody else carries out a terror attack. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about immigration and refugees, and things are getting very ugly up there in Sweden with the world's first feminist government. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. And so they've got some 10,000 rejected refugees still inside the country. One of them committed a terror attack to everybody's shock. They don't know where the other 10,000 are. And apparently there has been rioting in the Swedish city of Gothenburg, and the police are being attacked with Molotov cocktails. So tell us again how wonderful that open borders, New World Order, globalism thing is working out for you there. Are you feeling culturally enriched? And I mentioned this yesterday, and I actually got emails from people who thought I was pulling their leg. A major Swedish newspaper is saying that in order to solve the terror crisis, don't close the borders, don't get rid of the refugees, just ban cars. I am not kidding you. Of course, that's also part of the liberal dream, to ban cars and trucks, and everybody either walks or does bicycles or uses mass transportation if they can ever get it running. Boy, I talk about ours down here, the light rail system. They've taken to actually renting some of these empty retail spaces in the shopping malls to put up this traveling exhibit about how wonderful this is all going to be when it's done. And it is way over budget. It is way behind schedule. It has made a mess of the existing traffic. They're now realizing that the little pads that the tracks sit on the top of the columns, those are all going to have to be replaced. They're going to have to replace all of the cars in the train that they already bought because the frames are developing cracks from some bad engineering. The columns that are underneath the sections of track where the stations are going to be are all going to have to be replaced because the stations are turning out to be much heavier than expected. Those contracts for the columns went out before they should have. It's another wonderful government project here. apparently a politician over in Germany is demanding Great Britain have another Brexit referendum because the British people didn't understand Brexit. They don't understand what a bad thing it is. What it is they want a second chance to steal the election. Now, as you know, Hungary and a lot of other countries are starting to kick out all of these George Soros-funded non-governmental organizations as clearly working to destabilize their societies. And apparently, EU officials are demanding Hungarians stand up to Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who is demanding a clamp down on these open border George Soros projects. And so the EU is coming on and saying, no, don't you go along with your Prime Minister. That's bad, that's bad. We love our open borders. Just ask anybody up in Sweden. So we're seeing this huge fight between people who want to have sovereign, independent nations and the globalists. And the globalists are so close to their dream they can't stand it. We'll be back after station identification. And hello, hi America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, a lot of people were thinking this nonsense with United Airlines was a distraction, but it does seem to be going from bad to worse. And I think it reveals a lot about America's corporate culture. First of all, that United Airlines have these policies of overbooking airplanes and then just kicking people off. And so they had this video of this doctor who was trying to get to some patients who paid for his ticket and did not want to surrender his seat. United went on in and said, we're overbooked. We need some people to voluntarily surrender their seats so we can have a standby crew come on board the plane, and nobody volunteered, so they just picked a guy at random. And it turned into this debacle. It got videotaped. It got on media. The guy is suing. And so what do? They turn around and they try and smear the guy to make it look like somehow he deserved it. This is a guy who's 69 years old, and they went on out there on the attack. Oh, he did this years ago, and he did that. He's not a nice person. He's got anger management issues. It's all his fault. And, of course, the backlash against United has been horrendous. They've taken a major hit in their stock prices. And you would think they would have rethought what they were going to do. But no, because over in the Los Angeles Times, they have another story that just happened, where there was this gentleman known as Fearns who was on his way back from the island of Kauai, and he needed to get back in a hurry, so he paid $1,000 for a full-fare, first-class ticket to Los Angeles. He got on the aircraft at Lihue Airport on the island of Kauai and was sitting there in his first-class seat with his glass of orange juice, and all of a sudden, a United employee comes on and says, you have to get off the plane. The plane is overfull. And the guy said, I paid full price for this ticket. I'm not a standby passenger. And then they said, well, we need the seat for somebody more important. United Airlines apparently has a priority list of people, and Fearns wasn't on it. And they threatened him with handcuffs if he did not get off that aircraft. That's twice in a row. Now then, there is a rock band that apparently some years ago they were on tour, they were on United Airlines, and the United Airlines baggage handlers were just throwing the guitar cases into the baggage compartment of the airplane, and they broke the guitars. And so they wrote a song about it. They did a video about it. The video is on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. And I resonate with this because many, many years ago when I was coming back from my time on the Mississippi Queen, I had a 5-string banjo, and I flew United, and sure enough, they broke it. And I filed a claim, and I never heard from them ever, ever, ever again. And I love my 5-string banjos. What can I tell you? So, we're going to take a phone call from Sherry in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're dealing with a really egomaniacal tyrant here. And given that, we have to realize, I think, that how could we think that we could find a candidate who could change the system? They're not going to change. We did the best we could, and it won't be for nothing. Already we have these restrictions on immigration. Of course, all this stuff is used against him, but we have families who are willing to put their lives on the line, and he's assured jobs for us and security. I mean, his security's at risk, his financial security, his family's at risk, and we got these things done in spite of it, but they're not going to change. But it won't be for nothing because he's already done some good. Now, whistleblowers, they've come forward and they've helped us a lot, but they're protected by WikiLeaks. And I think that the collapse, I vote for the collapse. I mean, I think that there will be one because the system is not going to give up until there is a collapse. And we have to realize that who else could we have gotten who would do what he's done so far?
Well, Hillary would have done it. She just would have done it a lot more quickly. And
she would have taken us to war.
What we need to remember, okay, we are dealing with money junkies, and it is time to acknowledge that money junkies really are mentally ill, just like a heroin addict, a meth addict, a coke addict, whatever. All they can think about is the next fix. And we've all seen with our own eyes how such people are destructive to their own homes and their communities. The money junkies, people don't see them as mentally ill because they've got the money to dress up and look really good. And people say, wow, I wish I was rich like that. And again, I'm not talking about people who become rich by doing something really well, like a George Lucas, who, by the way, seems to have nailed it with THX 1138. Or James Cameron, who's still my favorite film director. I'm talking about the players, the politicians, the Wall Street sharpsters who game the system, who rig it so that money flows out of your pocket and into their pocket, and it's never, ever enough. No matter how much they have, it's got to be more, and war accelerates that process. And so, yeah, they're going to keep on doing what gets them their daily fix without caring that the whole thing could break down or result in a war down the road. It's just like somebody who's shooting that heroin day after day after day, not realizing he's about to be evicted because he hasn't been paying his rent.
That's avarice. That's avarice. It is like a disease.
It is a disease.
You just have to have more. And they're not going to stop, ever. So the collapse is pretty much, you know, if we blow up the whole world, they're not going to be able to succeed. We'll all go under then. They just have to keep this balance through deceit, and they're not going to, we have to realize a lot has been exposed now, and that's good. And he has accomplished some things. And even if he pulls, well, I won't say anything beyond there. I won't say, I'm not going to go beyond the next 4 years because I'm not really sure, but I do think they'll only go down when they can no longer feed that addiction.
Yeah, and they'll do it to their own death. Remember John Belushi? Or drug addicts killing themselves with the next fix. I mean, that's a common occurrence. And the same thing can happen with money addiction. No, you're not going to die because a pile of gold falls over onto you or something like that, but you can destroy the very economic system that is feeding your addiction. And we're on the verge of doing that right now. Or we can get into a war where we lose and everybody's poor. And that's how dangerous it is. The people who are in charge of our society, our economy, are mentally ill because they're addicted to money, they're addicted to power, they're suffering from narcissistic personality disorder. And again, getting on back to that story we just put out about Harry Reid, where he was actually on CNN telling the CIA, go ahead and lie to Trump, he's too stupid, he'll never figure it out. Because maybe that is part of what happened last week. And Trump had better wake up and realize. I mean, everybody knows the CIA lied to John F. Kennedy over the Bay of Pigs. That's why he wanted to shut them down.
Well, I don't think it takes a stupid person, and I don't think it takes a brave person. No one. They're going to kill you. They'll just get them out of the way. Look at the people that have lost their lives so far.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't take a stupid person. It doesn't take a brave person. No one is going to be able to stop them except a collapse that takes the money out of their pockets because we're not going to be feeding them anymore. And we have to do that within legal bounds or we'll all get, locked up. But it's going to happen.
Now, the problem is they're changing the laws to take away any possibility that we could ever interfere with them. And that's why we have so many laws right now. They're trying to take away freedom of speech. They're using lawfare. They're using economic warfare. They feel that playing dirty is their divine right because it gets them the next fix of money or power or fame that they crave so much. They are seriously mentally ill people.
Yes, they are. And here's one thing they can't dictate against, and that's a neighborly ethic, sharing what we have with other people. That's simple. It's a Christian ethic, but it's also a neighborly ethic. I give some of my squash to my neighbor. Mm-hmm. He gives me some of his big onions that I've never been successful growing. And this is how. And I've got extra. I've got extra okra left over. I say, I've got some extra melons. So melons. So we trade. And women there was women that kept each other's children in a neighborhood, and they tried to get them into some kind of channel where they weren't allowed to keep more than 5 children at a time, and they were taken to court and they won because there was no exchange of money. It's like, it's my turn to keep the kids. There were 5 households. My turn to keep the kids so you can all go to the grocery store without your kids. And there was no money. It was just it was this neighborly. They were giving of their time.
No, I understand. That's a very big deal out here in Hawaii. We do, a lot of time we buy in bulk. We'll share with the neighbors, and they share with us. It's not even a trade or a barter. It's like, I've got some extras here. Take them. And it happens all the time. It's part of our local culture here in Hawaii. But yes, government and corporations want to shut it down. They want every interaction between humans to be for money that can be taxed and monitored and controlled. And yeah, they're going to keep on doing that. I mean, we're at the point right now where we've got heads of corporations saying there is no right to clean drinking water. You should be forced to work to buy it. Next, it'll be air. Anyway, listen, Sherry, got to let you go. And we're going to do shout out to our on-air affiliates rejoining the network. It really is very crazy out there, where the ultimate goal is you're not allowed to grow your own food, you're not allowed to grow your own medicine, you're not allowed to provide your own electricity, you're not allowed to do any of that. Anything that you need for your life will come from some corporation that is profiting off of providing you with what you need, even if it's poor quality, like the poor quality vaccines, the poor quality food, the poor quality water coming out of the faucets at Flint, Michigan. How dare you collect rain on your own property? You will buy the money that's coming out of the faucet even if it's tainted with lead. That's where we are. That's how bad the fascism has gotten inside this country right now. Okay, let's see. I'm going to take a story, then we're going to get back to the phones here. The United States' second most hated agency, the Tourism Suppression Agency, or TSA, is now saying it's allowed to poke around inside your underwear and you should just accept it. And they're talking about this elderly lady who went through the scanner, and apparently she was wearing some kind of a napkin that triggered a false positive on the new scanner that's supposed to respect your privacy, but it gets all these false positives. And she was grabbed by a TSA agent, literally choked, and this TSA agent just felt her up inside her underwear without changing gloves, by the way. Those gloves are not for your protection from contagious diseases. They're just there for the TSA. Which means that when you are being fondled and grabbed by the TSA agent, you are basically sharing germs with the 10 or 20 people who went through that gate before you. And not only is this abuse illegal and unconstitutional, it's reminiscent of what the Nazis used to do. The Nazis used to just stop people at random and just open up their clothes and make sure they weren't carrying something inside. That's where we are in this country right now. Okay, we're going to take some phone calls. John in Chicago, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Okay, remember what you said last week, who benefits if the U.S. and Russia gets into a war?
Yes.
Israel, right?
Of course.
Now, doesn't Israel, do we not agree? Israel wants Assad gone, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if Tillerson just accomplished absolutely nothing and Russia is sticking with Assad, Israel can't be very happy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, you see all these pictures of Putin getting along fine with Netanyahu. I really want to know what's going on. I really do think the only people standing in the way of a global government headquartered in Jerusalem is the people in the United States who have free speech. And I think we are being set up for a war with Russia. Because, I mean, is Israel calling up Trump and saying, get Russia out of Syria for me? We have no idea what the hell's going on.
What's going on is, again, looking at all these pieces we talked about in the show today, Donald Trump is being lied to. He's being manipulated. If you take the stories that are over there at InfoWars, Brennan, McMasters, and McCain organized this false flag. It was launched by drone from a joint Israeli-Saudi base in Jordan, came across the border into Syria, killed a bunch of people, and Donald Trump's White House advisors all said, oh, Assad did it, we're off and running to the races. And so...
Well, that's it. Between that and the Harry Reid quote, then it is time for Trump to lower the hammer on the traitors like McCain, Graham, all the warmongers. It's time for him to lower the boom on all those guys. I hope he does it then. I mean, otherwise
I don't know. He had a golden opportunity to go after the corrupting influences in the government following that Susan Rice revelation, and he's dropped the ball on that again. And so apparently Trump is completely co-opted by his own advisors. It was a mistake to let Flynn go. It's a mistake to let Bannon go. Bannon was the only White House advisor who said that this cruise missile attack on Syria was a bad idea, and everybody's out there saying, oh, he's got to go. He's not on board with our policy. And the
other problem is, too, with our $20 trillion in debt, we're not going to get our health care reform, and we're not going to get any tax reform if we're in a state of war. So if they keep Trump in a state of war, we're not going to do anything to lower the amount of revenue coming into the government. They just can't.
Yeah, they absolutely can't. Well, they're going to borrow for the war, and we'll be a quadrillion dollars in debt to the private central bankers. And that, of course, is the way it's designed to be. But, again, I understand from Russia's point of view, they don't know who's really calling the shots over here. It's obviously at this point not Donald Trump. It appears to be McCain, McMasters, Brennan, and Netanyahu, and the White House advisors. And that is a very, very dangerous situation, because all of these people, they're looking at their stock portfolios that are loaded up with all kinds of defense contract stock, defense corporation stock. They want to see a war move forward because it's going to make them richer. Netanyahu, of course, wants greater Israel. And it's a very, very dangerous situation. And unfortunately, Donald Trump may be a moderately decent businessman. He is proving himself to be an incredibly weak leader.
Right. Okay. And again, like everybody did say, Tillerson goes over there to Russia with only a month worth of experience. I mean, it's just a joke, but this is
Lavrov chewed him up and spit him out.
You got it. Well, this is Trump's JFK moment. Either he goes up against the machine, or, like you said, there won't be another presidential election.
Well, I think that for a wide variety of reasons. But the thing with Tillerson, it wasn't just his inexperience going up against a career foreign minister like Lavrov. It's the fact that Tillerson was being asked to push a totally bogus position, which was the claim that Assad was gassing his own people, followed up by this ridiculous idea that Putin should drop all of his support for Syria. Neither of those was going to fly. And that's why Tillerson came home empty-handed. Lavrov chewed him up and spit him out like a used piece of gum.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to move to Lance in Coeur d'Alene. Aloha. What is on your mind?
Hello?
You're on the air.
Okay. The first time, I don't know, a few days ago, 5 days ago, whatever, when I heard about Trump firing his advisor, his main advisor that he replaced with McMaster, I also heard the story about his comments about trade with China, because he was meeting with one of their leaders, and also his response to the attack in Syria. And the first thing that popped into my mind is what happened to Ross Perot and the alleged assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, where they were both threatened, and said, you got to do what we say you have to do.
Well, in the case of Reagan, I think George Herbert Walker Bush wanted a promotion to the Oval Office a little sooner. I mean, he got it eventually, but I think George Herbert Walker Bush was aiming for a promotion, and since George Herbert Walker Bush appears to have been also involved in the Kennedy assassination, shooting at presidents was kind of old hat for him.
Well, my take on that was different. It was that, and this is mainly because the media and everyone got to the hospital in 10 minutes, and it took him 45 minutes to get there. And when he got there, his wound was from a flechette, not from a .38 pistol that he was supposedly shot with. And when you look at the video footage, it's clear he wasn't shot when he was put in the car. He's with his Secret Service agents. It takes him 45 minutes to get to the hospital. When he gets there, he was not shot with the gun that the man was shooting at him with. He was shot with something else. And then
it was a girl who was shooting at him.
He starts changing.
Oh, I'm confusing. That was the other attempted assassination. All right. Anyway, listen. Got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we go back to the phones here, political correctness on display. Apparently, Clemson University is now out there claiming that wanting someone to be on time might be racist. And they spent $26,000 on a training program that includes this claim, that expecting someone to be on time, well, it may not be inclusive. I mean, that is just la-la land. All right, let's see. Back to the phone. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, that last little bit of humor on being late racist, I got to tell you a little story on that. I lived in Utah, and a lot of LDS Mormons were there, and they always came late to work, 5-10 minutes late, and they referred to it as Mormon Standard Time, so we always got a kick out of that, Mormon Standard Time.
Well, there's a cultural thing here in Hawaii about Hawaiian Standard Time. Everybody's relaxed and hang loose. But it's a bit unfair because my experience living here in Hawaii is that people, when they say they'll be there sometime, don't expect them to be, too early. But if they say, I will be there exactly at blah, 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 they will be there. There's actually a great deal of punctuality in our local culture. Maybe this relaxed time thing is part of the tourism industry's attempt to make us seem more relaxed than we really are. Anyway, what's on your mind?
Well, a lot of your callers have touched on this JFK thing here, and I thought about this a while back and talked to Ron McDonald about this, but I have a little theory that we understand, we all pretty much understand that JFK was assassinated. It was an inside job. And you mentioned we have 17 intelligence agencies that are currently in the U.S. right now. It's 16 more than we really need. But, successful assassinations all have one common theme, and that means a security lapse has to happen and has to be authorized. I think what's happening here is that I think we've been having this kind of government run for a while. I don't think we really have had a president in a long time. Maybe JFK was our last true president. Maybe that's why he was taken out. He didn't follow the orders. And that the intelligence agencies are actually running the government, and the president is nothing more than a figurehead.
Yeah, that does seem to appear to be what's going on here, and of course that's not what we, the American people, are being taught is what's going on. We don't want a figurehead for an oligarchy that's unreachable and unaccountable for its actions. We demand accountability and transparency. We demand that the government agreed to be in that Constitution. And if they want to stand on up there and say we're not abiding by the Constitution, then in effect they're saying we're not a legitimate government, deal with it. And that, of course, is going to lead to other repercussions.
One last thing real quick here. You've had a couple callers calling in about money illness, wanting more, hoarding money. It's kind of like a hoarder of hoarding goods. Mm-hmm. Their hoarding is money and power, and that's an illness. But what about the illness of these people that actually are active participants in carrying out false flag events, targeting innocent people? What kind of illness is that? I mean, how do you get convinced to do these things knowing that you're going to kill innocent people and be part of this whole plan of finger pointing and okay with that? That bothers me that people could actually say, you know what, I'm going to do that. It's the right thing to do. And participate in those events, those false flag events. That angers me and worries me.
Well, there's two phenomena at work there. One is that for enough money, most people will be convinced to do anything. There was the experiment, the Milgram experiment, which said normally moral, honest, ethical people will do bad things if some authority figure tells them to do that. And then you have the true believer phenomenon, where if you convince somebody that there's an ultimate good, they'll go along with doing really bad things right now. Lee Remini, when she was doing her specials on Scientology, was saying that these Scientologists were easily convinced to go on out and harass people, break into their homes, break into their computers, because in their minds they believed that in the long run they were helping to make a better world. And as long as they had that belief, anything they were doing right here and right now was acceptable for that greater goal. And unfortunately, it does work. We saw that with a lot of Hillary Clinton's people, and I can imagine that there are a lot of people who are involved in these clandestine false flag operations who are thinking that, yes, what I'm doing right now is bad, but in the long run it serves a higher and more noble purpose. And, of course, it's a crock. Anyway, Steve, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Here we're going to go back to the phones. And Mark in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, you doing, Mike?
Doing
good.
Couple
questions to you.
Sure.
Well, one is, do you think there's some kind of a connection between certain forms of Judaism and the Wahhabi form of Islam, the Saudi Arabians? And do you think there's a connection between the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud, and the Hadith of Islam, which seem to have certain similarities in the way I think they explain the way the religious beliefs are held?
Well, first of all, I'm not a religious studies expert. I've read the Bible. I've read a little bit of the Talmud when I was married to my first wife. The others I really don't know, and I don't intend to claim I'm some kind of an expert. But I will tell you one thing. When these documents were all being written, there was no such thing as copyright and intellectual property, and the creators of these religious texts did not hesitate to copy things that looked good from other books. For example, in the Old Testament or the Torah, the story about Noah and the flood is lifted pretty much intact from the Epic of Gilgamesh, and that kind of thing was going on all the time. So there's probably huge amounts of cross-pollination in all of these religious texts, and so you're going to find similarities just because of that mechanism.
But the whole thing is, what I'm asking, though, is, isn't it strange the way it seems like Israel right now and Saudi Arabia, are almost like you'd think they would have one in the same country, the way they're acting in the Middle East.
I think that's more political than religious. I think that's more political than religious. I mean, they're all looking out for their self-interest. Saudi Arabia may be playing nice with Israel because it realizes that if it's not playing nice with Israel, then sooner or later they're going to claim ISIS and Al-Qaeda are inside Saudi Arabia and send in the cruise missiles.
But the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, I would really mention is, who are you talking about again? H.W. Bush?
Yes.
And some of the murders or attempted murders of presidents. Just, so I don't know if a lot of people realize it. Not only H.W. was spotted in Dallas, but also when you go into the closest assassinations where Ford, who was the 2 years he was president, was almost killed twice. Both times by, really crazy women who seemed to me like they were probably hypnotized. Squeaky Fromm and Sarah Jane Moore.
Yes.
And it's very close. The Squeaky Fromm would have known about the safety on her semi-automatic. Ford would have probably been dead right there. And the other one, but who was the vice president? Rockefeller.
Yes.
And of course, when Reagan was almost murdered, who was the vice president? Bush. I don't think these are coincidences.
No, they're not coincidences, and again, crazed lone nut assassin has almost become a CIA trademark for these things. But again, assassinations are not carried out for just one reason, but assassinations are a fact of life. Kennedys get killed for political reasons. John F. Kennedy was killed because his supporters couldn't control him. Robert Kennedy was killed because they were afraid once he got the authority of the White House, he would reopen the investigation into John's assassination. The incident at the Chappaquiddick was actually an attempt to assassinate the third Kennedy brother, but when Mary Jo Kopechne turned up dead, his chances at the White House evaporated, and they left him alone from that point on. And then, of course, there was John F. Kennedy, Jr., who was going to run for the same Senate seat Hillary Clinton eventually sat in. And it's very obvious that he, too, was the victim of an assassination.
Yeah, but when it comes to Ford was basically a harmless dude.
No, he was not. No, he was not. Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission. He knew what was really going on there. And Spiro T. Agnew had been forced out of the Nixon administration, and Gerald Ford brought on in just in case Nixon was going to be forced to step down or resign, which ultimately happened, because that way everybody knew that Gerald R. Ford would keep the link between Watergate and the assassination of John F. Kennedy under wrap. And, of course, what Ford did, he came on in, issued general pardons, said our long national nightmare is behind us, and that was the end of any investigations into just why Nixon's people had gone into that Watergate hotel in the first place.
But what I'm saying is Rockefeller wanted something. He wanted to become president.
Of course.
I don't see what Ford was other than to the CIA and other establishment. He did it. He did his job. He did what he was told to do, and that was it. Pardoning Nixon, and I still don't see where he was, a threat to the establishment.
No, in that case, it may have been a chance for Rockefeller to try and grab that center seat. But if you remember that period in our history, there was a lot of assassinations going on. And we may be entering another period of increased wet work, again, getting on back to what happened to Seth Rich. Anyway, Mark, I'm going to let you go. We're running short on time. I want to take another phone call. Katie down in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on. First off, I want to say I like that picture on the front of your website. Trump all suited up, boots ready to go on the ground. Oh, yeah, I love it. Hopefully he's going to, if he allows us to get into war, his butt is going to, let them all fight their own wars, as you know. Okay, another thing is, don't you think we're giving Trump too much latitude here? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he is part of the establishment. He's not some guy that's getting, supported. Well, and I think he was before, Mike. I mean, look at his background. I mean, how do you declare bankruptcy 9 times and come out clean and a billionaire? Come on. I mean, you're in with the money junkies, just like, we see. I mean, he filled the swamp. So, I just think, look, how about if we just quit voting? Like you were talking to that earlier caller, which I really, really liked his comments, about, you got, these agencies, unconstitutional agencies, 16, 17, he said, whatever, CIA, FBI. They're not to exist, and the federal government has breached their contract, which is that Constitution. We have no government. We have none. So I don't know why people continue to go out and act like we do by voting. To me, it's I don't understand it. Why do people keep voting? Do you know?
Well, they keep voting. Well, we did, in fact, succeed in overcoming the election fraud last year because they really did want Hillary Clinton in there ahead of Trump. Trump won, and he's obviously been co-opted. And so it reinforces the fact that who we choose for president really isn't that important. It is a systemic problem, and the system itself has to either be changed or, failing that, it's got to be brought down. Or let's be more accurate, it has to be allowed to collapse, which it seems well on its way to doing. I am seeing so many parallels between what we're going through right now in this country and what was happening in the Soviet Union just before it fell apart over there.
Absolutely, and thank God this country is armed to the teeth. I mean, and I think it's going to take the people. It's not going to be we vote one man in and he fixes everything. It's not going to happen.
No, obviously that was the lesson we got from here. I mean, we worked really hard to get the Hillary-Bush cartel out of power, which is really what my focus was on this last year, and we got Trump on in, and all of a sudden, in the space of a week, he is co-opted. And I actually got an email from somebody responding to my Westworld joke from earlier in the show saying, are we sure that's really the same Donald Trump who was running for campaign last year? I think that's getting a little bit out there. I was trying to be funny, and apparently some people took it seriously.
Let's keep in mind, too, we've got two factions at play here. You've got the communists, the Obamas, Hillary's, and then you've got the socialists, the Trumpsters. I mean, those people are vying at the top. You and I are down here at the bottom. So those two powers are fighting. So the communists are I mean, they're mad. They're angry that this happened. But I don't want international socialism either.
Well,
I say, don't
hang on a second. Hang on. Okay, I think you're misapplying the labels. First of all, this country has gone fascistic, and the argument wasn't over whether we're going to be capitalistic, fascistic, or communistic. The argument is over who gets their hands on the controls in order to milk the most profit out of it. And the reason Obama and Hillary are angry is because they're not in that position where they can sell access and sell secrets. I mean, look how much money the Clintons made while they were in office. Now they're out of office. The money supply has dried up. Same thing with Barack Obama. That was what the fight was really about. Who's going to be on the receiving end of all that graft and corruption?
That's right. Why is Hillary still walking around? Trump said, I watched him on TV, if I were president, you'd be in jail right now.
Yeah, that's another one of his promises I wish he would keep.
Me too. All right, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks. We're going to take Dan in Canada. Aloha. What is on your mind today?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a subject that sort of got overlooked because of the Susan Rice stuff and the Syria bombing and stuff like that. It was this guy named Michael Kadar. He was a 18 or 19-year-old dual Israeli-American that called in 120 bomb threats in 33 states, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, using voice masking software to make him sound like a woman. And he called these Jewish community center and said, we're going to bomb you. So apparently his father was arrested also, and his father is a computer expert. So they're telling us that this kid has autism and a brain tumor, and he didn't know what he was doing.
No, that's ridiculous. He's got a Bitcoin account worth millions, and apparently he and his father are computer criminals, and they were making huge amounts of money and doing all kinds of nasty things. But we're supposed to feel sorry for him because he's autistic. He had his vaccinations, and they're playing for sympathy. And yes, the story has gone away, not so much because of Susan Rice and Syria, but because the reaction to the story of, oh, this kid did all these terrible things and he made all this huge amounts of money and he been paid by a third party to make these bomb threats. They wanted it to go away because the public reaction to this, oh, he's autistic and his brain tumor, was a collective, oh, come on now. And so that had to go away. And it is not uncommon to see the news being managed to drive a failing story out of public view with a new story, which is why I think with the collapse of this Assad gassed his own people, 3 strikes and you're out, I think that's going to accelerate the rush to attack North Korea.
Exactly. It was weird, like the bombing threats, and then there was a Jewish cemetery that got knocked over by the wind, and they said, oh, it's, these radical right-wing people like Steve Bannon. They said, this guy was, he worked for Breitbart, and Breitbart was founded by a Jew. So I don't see the connection there.
No,
Trump apparently...
Here's what's going on, okay? All of these lies and propaganda are being thought up by all these individual players. There's no real coordination. And one of the mistakes the propagandists did make was turn over the creation of propaganda to advertising agencies and public relations firms like Hill and Knowlton. And institutionally, these are places that don't think long-term or holistic view. It's always a short campaign. 1 or 2 ads, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe a 3-week campaign. Then everything's wiped clean and they start all over again. And that is why we see the propaganda being inconsistent, contradicting itself, and the attitude is, well, forget about what we told you yesterday. This is what we want you to believe today. And, of course, that doesn't really work because we remember what we were told yesterday. We remember what we were told in 2013. We remember what we were told in 2014. And we look at that entirety and we realize we are being fed a huge nonstop diet of USDA choice bovine excrement. We are the most lied to people on the face of the earth, and it's time to acknowledge that and decide what we're going to do with it. Are we going to continue to work underneath a government that lies to us about everything? More importantly, do we want our children to have to grow up with a government that lies to them about everything to get their money and their obedience and their involvement in wars of conquest? And I think for most parents the answer there is going to be no. I don't want my children growing up under such a government. I want them growing up under the government described in that Constitution.
Exactly. I mean, the media is such a huge part of how people just form their opinions, and unfortunately,
not as much anymore. Not as much anymore. They're losing their influence. Absolutely.
Just another quick note on this Michael Kadar. Supposedly he's selling all these passports and visas, and those are hard to make. I'm sorry, but if you're an 18-year-old kid, you don't have connections to people with making false passports. I mean, is there any Mossad connection to this kid, or are they just using him as a
there could be. There could be. The Mossad loves to fake passports. They love to steal other people's passports. There was a big stink a few years ago down in New Zealand where Mossad agents were caught trying to steal New Zealand passports to use as cover for their covert operations around the world. And so, yeah, to me, it sounds like this kid did have some pretty serious resources behind him.
Unbelievable. Anyways, I thought I'd mention that.
Okay. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to fit in one more call before the commercial break. Christy in New Mexico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I want to respond to two of the people who were speaking about the collapse and hoping the collapse comes. I mean, we're in the collapse.
Yes.
But worst psychopaths will take over because they always have a plan. And we, the people, do not have a plan. And I believe that it will overturn and overturn. I believe that we're at the end of the pyramid scheme, the pyramid way of governing.
And the pyramid way of economics, yes.
Yes, and of governance.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to Bucky Fuller, who always asks the question, how can we make a world that works on behalf of all mankind, on behalf of we as individuals, the people, and the planet? What are our options? What are our possibilities? What solutions do we always have? Do we already have? Because I believe we have the solutions, options, and possibilities right now. Right now. What are they in education, in environment, in governance? Why can't we explore the commons, direct democracy? There are people talking about urban gardens, permaculture.
Let me cut you off because we're coming up on the commercial break. I want to answer your question. The problem right now is those who are in power are dead set against allowing us to make any changes to the system at all because the system favors them. We're going to have to sit quietly and patiently and let this system collapse the way the Soviet Union did. Then we're going to have a chance to set some new things up. And there are lots of good ideas out there about crowdsourcing the voting process to keep it honest, crowdsourcing, returning control of curriculum to the local community. There's all kinds of things we can be doing, and we need to follow that original template of the Constitution that power should not be concentrated anywhere but diffuse across the states, the communities, and that central government is a referee ringleader only and is never allowed to grow further than that. And finally, no more private central banks ever, 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 ever. Thank you for the phone call, Christy. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment, breaking story here. This is from Jeremy Koh, and North Korea correspondent for Channel News Asia. Apparently, North Korea orders foreign journalists be ready to move out at 6:20 a.m. tomorrow. It is actually already 8 a.m. tomorrow in Seoul, in Korea right now. So we don't know if the attack is on or what the heck is going on, but it looks like they're going to distract from the collapse of the Syria propaganda by launching a war on North Korea with more propaganda. And this thing is going to spiral completely out of control. Now, apparently Facebook has finally rolled out their new false news program where people who are still using Facebook, both of them, can hit that little down arrow, chevron, on a story, and underneath where it says report the post, there is now an option to select this is a false news story. There are two problems with it. First of all, I did a quick search for stories about Assad gassed his own people. They're all labeled as true. Second, Facebook is not even taking responsibility for deciding what is or is not fake news. They're letting readers decide and for themselves. And you don't know who's doing it. This is wide open for hacking and rigging by people who want certain things to be hidden from the American people. And that's another reason to just stop using Facebook and go on to some of the new alternatives that are coming up, like Scene Life and Gab and VK and the rest of that. Just stop using these sellout established social media. They are literally as corrupted as the corporate media is right now. So, my goodness, what interesting times we are living in. It's come out that one of the victims of that Stockholm attacker, the guy drove into the crowd, one of the people who was a victim was a psychiatrist who was committed to helping asylum seekers facing deportation. They ran down one of their allies. Just incredible here. Another article coming out, well, it's a YouTube video. The U.S. invasion of Syria began 5 years ago. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. The U.S. has been trying to get rid of Bashar al-Assad for almost 6 years. We found that document going all the way back to 1983, and they were talking about regime change in Syria when Assad's father was running the place. This is not about chemical weapons. It's about money. It's about oil pipeline rights of way. It's about a nation that has lost its manufacturing, and nobody wants to buy the GMO agriculture. And the only way they can keep their empire afloat is to conquer new provinces and soak up their wealth the way ancient Rome did. And we know how that worked out in the long run. We are on a path to disaster for this nation. I hate to see it happen. But this nation has, unfortunately, become something very ugly. It is certainly not the nation I was taught that I lived in. It's not the nation I thought I saw before my eyes when I was very young. Maybe I was being fooled back then, but we won't be fooled again. There's the music. Time to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please make a point of taking these stories, especially the ones about the gas attack actually came from a Saudi-Israeli base in Jordan. Spread them all over your social media. We have to shout the propagandists and liars down. We're talking about stopping World War III, and I need you to help me do it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.